TRC EDC back again with another knife video. This is the Harnds Pollux. This is a knife from Harnds, which is an OEM, original equipment manufacturer. It does work with Boker and CRKT, I think also Steelwill, some other companies. So, you know, they've been in the knife game for a while, but they are now going out on their own. They've been, Harnds has been out with some of their own knives for several years now. I'm just getting my hands on one for the first time. But the Pollux and the Caster, Harnds Pollux and Harnds Caster, are two sister knives. Caster and Pollux obviously were the Gemini twins of mythology. So the Caster version of this knife is a drop point. This version, the Pollux version, is a tanto with a recurve. So that's pretty much what you need to know about the knife up front. Let's go ahead and take a look at some size comparisons. We have the Kershaw Bareknuckle, which is a pretty good size comparison for this. So is the Spyderco Paramilitary 2, and you'll see that they're about the same size. The Para 3 over here is a lot smaller, and you're also going to see that it's sort of in between the sizes of the Benchmade Super Freak and the Benchmade Griptilian. We'll also put up two additional budget knives here, the Civivi Shard and the CRKT LCK, both of which this knife eclipses. So first things first, I do like the size of this knife. I think the Paramilitary 2 is a great size. This is the same size as the Paramilitary 2. I like the overall design of the knife, the shape of the blade and the handle together, I think looks pretty appealing. The ergonomics on this, I'd say, are about a 7 out of 10. I'm pretty happy with the ergonomics. I would prefer something a little wider in this dimension, but overall, I'm pretty happy with the ergonomics on this. The pivot is, you know, I could take or leave the pivot, but overall, I think it's an okay pivot. The lanyard hole is well positioned, isn't really in the way. You still get a deep carry clip here, which is great in this price range, and this is really easy in and out of the pocket. The handles are plastic, but the plastic actually feels pretty good. I'm pretty happy with the plastic on this knife, and so I definitely think that is a plus. The action on the pivot is actually pretty good for this price range. It's not bearings. I believe it feels like Teflon. You know, Teflon washers, but it's pretty good for this price range, and you know, I'm talking about the action on the pivot. We'll get to the detent a little bit later. So again, overall, those are the good on the knife here. Let's talk about the bad. So there are several bad things about this knife. One is this hole. This hole is not really easily thumb rolled out. It's kind of awkward to do. And it is very difficult to Spidey flick it. You can do it, but it's, you know, you'll misfire a lot. When you do it, it doesn't, you know, feel like the same, and there I just misfired. It doesn't feel the same as, you know, Spidey flicking with ease the Paramilitary 2. So, you know, this hole I could really do without, especially since it's a flipper. I think it's sort of unnecessary. The billboarding on here I don't like. It's pretty big. It's right in the middle of the blade. I just think it's a bad form. The billboarding on the back I think is okay. It's a little bit smaller, and so I think the billboarding in the back is okay. One more thing on the good I forgot to mention is that this does come down to a pretty thin edge and does slice pretty well. But all right, so back to the bad. All the edges on this knife are pretty sharp, meaning, you know, up here and up here, these aren't knocked down at all. The jimping is pretty sharp here on the back of the spine. Even the plastic jimping here is pretty, on the back spacer, is pretty sharp. So, you know, I definitely don't like that. The cutout on the handle here on the handle scales, so for lock bar access, is too small, and since the lock bar is so thin, pushing the lock bar over far enough to disengage is pretty uncomfortable, and you know what you end up getting is on your thumb you get that sort of like indentation when you go to close the knife. That's not really that pleasant. Also, the detent on this will misfire if you don't. Will misfire pretty much every time if you're trying to slow roll this out. You're not building up enough kinetic force to get it out all at once, unless you're really coming all the way down pretty quickly, or you're putting some wrist into it like this, right? So, you know, like I said, the pivot itself feels like it's pretty nice on the Teflon washers, but the detent really could use a lot of work on this knife. So overall, I think that's the good and the bad. Would I recommend this knife? No, I wouldn't. The reason I wouldn't is because even at $30 or $35, so at $30 you're gonna be able to buy this knife, which I really love. This thing is insanely thin behind the edge. It's a hollow ground. It's a very slim profile in the pocket. This is the CRKT LCK. The action on this is great. The plastic feels better than the plastic on here, on the Harnds. You know, this, it's just an overall great knife that I'm very happy with. This also comes in two different versions. This has a satin version with more of a drop or spear point blade. This is a sort of a DLC version with reverse tanto. So, you know, but the detent on this one is much better, much nicer, and it's really hard to get this knife to fail on its detent. So this I would recommend way more than that. Also the CJRB Centros at $35, and a lot of CJRB's other offerings at $35 come on bearings and are D2 steel and G10. So much better materials, you know, than this for pretty much the same price. So, you know, I'm glad I got Harnds knives in my hand. This really is not a bad knife, and probably, you know, 5 years ago or 4 or 5 years ago when it first came out, it was a good knife for this price range. But it's continued to remain in this price range as budget knives keep getting pushed down and down and down in price. And, you know, companies like Civivi and CJRB are coming in and redefining what a budget knife is. So I would definitely recommend one of those knives over this. Also, you know, several CRKT knives I would recommend over this as well. That being said, you know, if I just had this knife, I wouldn't mind it. Like I said, the ergonomics are pretty comfortable, and it's pretty slicey itself. I can get over most of the other issues. If I got this as a gift, I would keep it, you know, but it's just not something I would recommend you go out and buy. Thanks so much for watching.